Hey everybody, I'm back. 2 pounds heavier, more gray hairs, worse eyesight, but I'm fine with that. So today we're taking a look at Quartermaster General Cold War. Now I've played this game maybe 8, 9 times, so I think I've got enough plays under the belt. Feel I can review it here. So I've only played it 3 players. You can go 3 to 6. You can do sort of a team mode where you're playing one of the different factions. So it's an interesting design. They've decided to kind of break up the Cold War into the 3 sides of, Soviet Warsaw Pact, America, NATO, and then the non-aligned powers. So it's an interesting kind of different take. The designer puts in his notes he's deliberately trying to do something different than Twilight Struggle, which is, reigning supreme and such a huge footprint in everyone's mind of the Cold War game. So it's really interesting just the different approach that the designer takes here. And I really enjoy the game. It's played, all the powers play well. Everyone can win, and I've seen everyone win multiple times. And you win in different ways, like the way that the cards come out is different. Let's get into the components, and I'll kind of talk about my thoughts on the game. I don't think I'm going to explain how the game plays, like a playthrough. There's enough of those out there. Maybe at some point I'll come back and do one. But there are, when I'm doing these older games that have been out several years, I just feel like there's other videos out there. People really want me to comment on the video, say I really want you to do how to play, and then I'll come back and do one of those. So components wise, the board, it's a solid board. It works well. It doesn't look particularly fantastic. It's just this kind of greenish background. So it works, and but nothing is like super standout. But the way the game mostly works is you've got these key centers that will score you victory points, and through card play you can create more. And this is a Cold War game almost in the sense that Red Dawn is a Cold War movie. This is not a simulation. This is just kind of a fantasy of what could have happened in the Cold War. What's interesting is it tries to get the feel and in the feeling of nuclear deterrence and the threat of the nuke. Because what happens is the way the card play works and what gives it kind of its unique feel is whenever you attack, you're escalating tension against the other opponent. So if the Soviets escalate a lot against NATO, then NATO can more freely launch a nuke. They just launch a nuke without having the escalation happen first. They're going to be hit with a massive penalty. And the nukes can cause massive victory points for us. So that's interesting, but I've also seen games where no nukes are played or very few. The last game I actually played as the non-aligned powers. I was the only one to launch a nuke. I launched it as the Chinese against Japan. And that was very effective, but I think it annoyed the American player too much that he then just kind of focused on me, didn't do enough to stop the Soviets, and the Soviets ended up winning. The rule book, it's got a table of contents. It's pretty short, so it's 40 pages, but it's a shortened 40 pages. It doesn't really have a long playthrough, which again, I always like those in the game, play out several turns, just to let you grasp and conceptualize the rules. I don't think it's as important anymore in a lot of games, at least more family style games, because there's always a video. Some content creators put up a video on how to do it. Less so in kind of the war game, war themed category. But this is not that heavy or complex of a game. Where it gets interesting is really in hand management, in the way your cards come out. And what's interesting is you're really not limited. Like if there's a card you really want to get, there's ways to shuffle through your deck and get your cards. Speaking of the cards, I do wish that there was a little more effort done on the art. So there's event cards and there's espionage cards, and you've got all these different events, all these different status cards, and the art's the same on all of them. I can understand, hey, to build army, attack cards, those being the same art is understandable, but it would just be really nice if, like, the event for the Ba'ath movement in Iraq, it's the same art for the Sandinista. And I understand, this was put out by PSC, I think Plastic Soldier Company. I don't even know if they're making games anymore. I haven't seen one from them in a couple of years. They may have done under, but even at the time they were kind of a smaller company. But it's a great game. The art is subpar, both on the board and then on the cards. But you don't really play a game for the art. You typically play it for the gameplay, which is really good. I am impressed that they've got the player aids. It's quite good. It's got a breakdown of the type of cards and then a turn sequence and starting placement. So, it's a really good player aid. You haven't played this game for months. I typically have been playing it like 2 or 3 times a year. So I come back, I haven't played it in 6-7 months. I don't totally remember. I can just review this player aid and get right back into it. And they have enough player aids for mass player count. The top player count here is 6. It's got 6 player aids. It's wonderful. I don't know, so many games, you just get 1 player aid, even in a multiple player game. It just makes no sense. The only time you should have only 1 player aid is if it's a solitaire game. Every publisher needs to do like this, put in enough player aids for the full player count. So I've never played it at full player count, but I'm sure there are people who do. I can't really speak to if it's good at 6. You kind of play on a team where there's like one person's doing the Soviet Union cards and one person's doing the Warsaw Pact cards. If you're, the communists. I've never played it that way. It could be great. It may be terrible. I can only speak to the 3-player game, which I quite enjoy. So the pieces are really cool. It's 5 PSC games, and I think they're known for making, it's like Plastic Soldier Company. They got a lot of really kind of cool plastic minis. They're the same for each power, right? So the tanks look the same for the Soviets as the non-aligned, as the West. But they're cool. You got tanks, you got subs, you got planes, and it's a really fun game if you like hand management games. Again, it's kind of almost a Red Dawn style fantasy. I mean, the Soviets, they can take over America. You can roll through Germany and Eastern Europe as the West. Again, I took Japan out of the West the last time as the non-aligned. So a lot of kind of wacky, ahistorical Red Dawn type events can occur. So you have to know that going in. This is not a simulation game, but it's a very fun game that creates the tension and feel of a Cold War, like just a panic with, they've got a bunch of nukes prepped. I cannot aggress against them. If I do too much aggression, they're going to launch those nukes. And so it encapsulates that feel, and that's what makes a good game, I think, is having interesting decisions, and the theme is really encapsulated within those interesting decisions. Now, you are kind of limited by the cards you get, but like I said, there's a mechanic that lets you search through your deck. If you know you really want a card, you can get it. So I think this game rewards repeated plays, high plays. If you know the deck, you're going to do it a lot better. My game group, we really just play not that often, like once, twice, maybe 3 times a year. So, we're not high-level players. People are doing this 100 times on Vassal or anything. But it works for us. It's balanced for us. Maybe if you get 100 plays in, you might say, hey, it's unbalanced. The Soviets win more often at super high-level plays. I'm just not playing it that competitively. And I think it's easy enough to balance that out by just spotting points. You can do a bid and somebody else starts with 4 points if you want to be the Soviets. That. So I think it's easy if there was a balance issue. I've not been able to see this after the numerous plays I've done. But again, not at a high 100 player, 100 place style. And what's kind of interesting in the game is it handles the 3-player war game syndrome well. So in a lot of games, it feels like the top, player is picked on a lot by number 2 and 3, and then they don't have a chance. They can come back into it. Here, the way the game works is you have a scoring. You play 2 turns, you score. You play 2 turns, you score. Changes at the very end on turn 19. You just do 1 turn and then you score. So it's 19 rounds. You're scoring every 2 rounds. And so, yeah, if somebody gets into the lead, they're going to get picked on by the other players. But it's going to be very clearly evident to the other players that, okay, that person's not the threat anymore. We've got to refocus and readjust. And so it's a simple game with a lot of interesting decisions. So if I got 3 players and I'm a little fried from work, I don't want to play a really heavy game. There's other 3-player games that are great, like Brotherhood and Unity, Triumph and Tragedy. Those are my other 2 big go-to 3-player games. If I want something a little lighter but still very interesting, I go with this title. If you're do any amount of 3-player gaming, I would recommend picking this up. It's fantastic. Again, it's not a simulation. It's not the complex, war type game as Brotherhood and Unity would be, but it is still fantastic. I really like the way the cards work and the asymmetry of the players. So there's status cards that will grant a permanent and continuing effect, and the way they work. So the Soviets don't even have any of those. They've got a lot more military. They've got a lot more espionage cards, and so they play quite differently than the non-aligned. The non-aligned status cards typically will then put out more scoring areas on the board. Make maybe holding Indonesia more valuable, or whatnot. Southeast Asia more valuable, and so they change how they score. And then the status cards typically for the West, they change the West capabilities. Lets them be able to discard a couple of cards to create an army or do something. And so just Soviets don't even have them. They've got other strengths, not aligned. It lets them score easier and make areas more valuable. And then the West just gets better capabilities and able to do things throughout. So it's very interesting just the way all the nukes work too. Everyone's got different breakdowns. So the asymmetry and the balance of this game, and again, it's not a long game. What do they put on the box? They say 90 to 120 minutes. That's pretty accurate. Especially if everyone knows the game, you'll play it pretty quick. I think the 2-hour mark is probably accurate. 90 minutes. I mean, if you're playing it more often than I am, if you're playing it all the time, you really know the cards. I could see that happen. Again, one of the problems is just looking at the cards, you can't quite tell. So let's say you're playing Twilight Struggle. You just look at the card. You can see the picture. You don't even need to read any of the text because you've played it, 50 times. You know what that picture is, what that card is, and you know it right away. All the pictures look the same for every event or every status card. So it's just, if they do another edition, I hope they improve the art both on the board and on the cards. I think the designer now works mostly for Ares games, and they just released a Quartermaster General Eastern Front. Haven't played that yet. One of my buddies picked it up. I hope to play it soon. But I know they're slowly been reprinting stuff. I think they've got the World War II one in print and the World War I one in print. So I was not a fan of the World War II one at all. Really loved the World War I one and really liked this one. So if you've only played the World War II one and you didn't like it, and you're thinking, hey, all the Quartermaster General ones are the same, this one is a lot more dynamic, a lot more interesting, and a lot more the feel of the Cold War. So if you passed on World War II, I would still suggest taking a look at this, at least playing it, if you can acquire it. If they ever reprint it, I would snag your copy, because it really is a fantastic three-player game. And it's hard to do, balance it correctly. And again, if there is a massive runaway winner, right? If the two players just let somebody else run away with the game, you can clearly tell that's happening. You're not going to have to drag the whole game out for the 19 turns. There's an instant win mechanic. And I've not yet had that happen, because usually we react. But part of the instant win mechanic is you've got to be 20 points ahead of the last place player, but the second place player can cede points to the last place player to kind of catch them up, which is also quite interesting. And I've had that happen. I've had the seeding the points mechanic happen in several games. Not all games, but several of them. I've yet to see one where it's the auto instant beat. But again, if you want me to do a playthrough of the game, if you like what I'm doing, just comment. Again, I've been out of this for a while. I don't have a lot of free time. I run my own business. I have 5 kids. But when I do have some free time, I think I'm going to try and be making some more reviews. So if you like it, if you enjoy it, please comment. Anyway, till next time.